What's happening, people? Let's look at this PS5 and common sense right now, dig? I'm not gonna speculate. I'm gonna look at it in a common sense, almost factual way compared to what we have now. Richard Review Tech, I watched that guy. I made a video talking about Thanksgiving Day shopping and why it was a thing and why it's not corporate's fault. Go check out that video if you want to. If I can manage to remember, I'll put a link to that video down in the description. Well, him and the Red Dragon have made a video talking about the next console, the PS5. Excuse me, and I don't fully disagree with either one of them, but Rich is reaching for a lot from a company that has frankly showed us this generation they don't have a lot to offer. And I know there's going to be a bunch of people who say, oh, that's not true, Sony's probably the only one offering anything. But I've said this before and I will continue to say it. While PS4's numbers are the best, financially they're the worst. And Sony has proved this time and time again, this generation alone, that the sins brought forth by the PS3 generation have not been washed under the bridge, nor can they wipe their hands with that generation just yet. And like I said, they have shown us several times that this is the case. If you think I'm lying, look at how many times the excuse cut corners to cut cost have been used when talking about Sony products. A fuck ton. And why do you think that is? You think it's because the company doesn't have the money to fork over? Or do you think it's just because you want an excuse for why something from Sony is way under par? If you think about it, it's more than not the first option because of how much debt Sony was in coming into this generation. Let's not forget, PlayStation didn't even know if a PS4 was going to happen, on how bad of a generation the PS3 was and how much financial strain that the company had gone through during that generation. It wasn't no 5 years, it was like 8-9 years that the company was straining itself financially, draining from every other division in the Sony company to keep PlayStation afloat, which is why their financials are so bad now. And I've come up with multiple different ways for Sony to make a shit ton of money real fast and not cut corners to make sure that we get the same product. The PS Vita, that was one Sony could have easily turned into a project that made fucking millions of dollars and almost overnight. Yet Sony ignored it completely and let it go to the wayside so they can't make any fucking money and the damage has been done. And you might be asking yourself, well, what is the PS Vita? How could they have turned that around? Very simple. You take away the word proprietary from the PS Vita. Many more people will go out and buy one because no longer does it cost more than $150 to buy a PS Vita. I'm not required to buy Sony's overpriced bullshit memory cards. You take away the word proprietary, Vita sales go through the fucking roof. The word proprietary was the dirtiest word Sony ever uttered for the PlayStation Vita, and it was its biggest downfall because it was the number one reason people did not go buy it. Because proprietary memory, and the memory was double, if not triple, if not 4 times more expensive than the shit on the shelves you already used. It was that bad. Same thing goes for the 3G. It wasn't a bad idea. It was proprietary. You could not have that without being a AT&T customer. Another bad word being made possible by Sony, forcing you to utilize something you might not have actually needed to go out and utilize, due to the fact that if you did want to, you had to go through AT&T, even though you might be on Sprint, you might be on Verizon, you might be on T-Mobile, you could be on Walmart, you can be on fucking Metro. There's so many different type of fucking phone services out there that the fact they stuck with one just grounded them so much worse. Okay, how do you fix that? Very simple. You go and you say, let's use everybody. If you have a Sims card to throw in there for it, fuck it, use it, go for it, you're good to go. Bam, already, that's a big time winner. That sounds like a great idea because the Vita's already established and it's got a lot of great games. I'm not taking anything away from the Vita and its library of titles because they are really good. But Sony, being as proud as they are for no reason, won't do it. And you're like, well, that's one thing, what's the other? Well, obviously, meeting the demand of products on time. Speaking of the PSVR, PlayStation VR launched with very underwhelming amounts of numbers. In fact, it's still underwhelming how bad it is. Not saying the games are bad, I don't know, I haven't played a PSVR. I'm talking about the simple supply and demand here. When the PSVR was launched, it was like the next big thing from Sony was so hyped up, so, many people wanted it, and then it came out and it was just, the supply couldn't meet the demand. And it hurt other games that utilize the PS4 as either a PS4 game or a PSVR game. Games such as Resident Evil 7. Again, I'm not taking any credibility away from the system itself. I'm taking away from the credibility on the simple fact that Sony could not meet the demand by the supply. They just weren't able to do it. That's something from this generation. Okay? We can talk about how the PS4 Pro was corner cut from beginning to end. Sony didn't even put in their own patents. Sony waited 4 years before they even got a 1 terabyte PlayStation 4 on the market. And a working one. They've had one before, and it was the 2013 model. It was for Black Ops 3, and the system was terrible. So they went back to the 500 gigs. And they were very anti-consumer about using externals until the Slim came out. They were very anti any kind of memory unless you yourself decided to open and void the warranty so you could have better memory. Okay, that is cutting costs, that's cutting corners, that's doing everything wrong. Okay, PlayStation 4 came into this generation, I will say this until I am dead, came into this generation with no competition. Xbox fucked up tremendously and is still paying for it now. It's gotten better, but they're still paying for it. Nobody paid attention to the Wii U. 13 plus million people who own a Wii U are the only ones who paid any attention to it. I'm one of those people. Nobody was paying attention to the Wii U. So, two companies no one's paying attention to, and Sony is right there, and they don't have to try that hard. All they have to do is go and say Xbox is fucking up this, and here's how you do that, and bam, all eyes on you. Okay? So, why does this matter for the PS5? Well, it matters because Sony didn't have to fight this generation. They didn't have to put up a fight and try. They just were handed the keys to the kingdom, and I've said that before. Rich talks about PS5 possibly being native 8K. They're not even native 4K. They're using tricks and teraflop titties and magical wizards to get to a 4K idea on the PS4 Pro. Okay? The same thing Xbox is doing. The Xbox just has more teraflop titties, but it's still tricks and wizardry to get to 4K. Alright? The PS5 should try better than any other console to be native 4K. It needs to be native. It needs to be 60 frames non-stuttering. It needs to be able to be on that level. Maybe the PS5 Pro can step up to an 8K, even though 4K is the standard as right now. I bought a Curve TV this past year in June, and it's 4K. QLED and 8K I think are like a few far years out, okay? And even if they're like 5 years out, that's still too long out for it to even reach what 4K's reached now, and 4K's been out for a long time, okay? So saying Sony's gonna risk going to 8K and trying to reach a market that's about yay big is fucking crazy. You need to look at it as, Sony, if you can't promise me a 4K native with no hiccups, no one should buy it. Okay, if you can't do that. Because the PS4 shows how much money they were truly pinching, how many pennies they truly pinched. They went from the PS4 in 2013 to the PS4 Pro in 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. And the PS4 Pro was meh when you compared it side by side. Unlike the Xbox One X, when you compare the Xbox One X to its 2013 counterpart, it is leaps and bounds better, which is why more people are willing to spend the money on Xbox, because not only is the Xbox One X more powerful and leaps and bounds better, just an overall look and appearance and what it can do, but so is the Slim. The Slim looks better. There's a 4K Blu-ray player in there. There's certain games that run at 4K. It does HDR rendering. So many more pros to that. To go and upgrade from the 2013 model to a Slim or a Xbox One X. Where with the Pro, you might, but then you might not, because Sony hasn't really been pushing for the Pro in the way Xbox has been pushing for the X. And it's really sad. Really sad. So, that being said, I think there's more reason to say 8K, it will never hit. This is all this generation I'm pointing out. This isn't from PS3. This is right now in 2018 what Sony's doing. They are not native 4K. 4K is patented by Sony. They could have taken the risk and they didn't. They're not memory friendly. The internal memory is years behind. They are purposely cutting corners because they don't have the money. And they have, while been in number one this entire generation for system sales, they lost more money last generation than they made this generation. They've been able to stop hemorrhaging money, yes. But that doesn't mean they've made back nearly enough they lost. See what I'm saying? And we probably would have seen PlayStation 4 actually break 100 million by now had they had to have had competition. Had they not been the only ones on the playground people wanted to mess with. Because competition creates sales. Competition produces good games. Why do you think it's different now? It's different now in 2018 going into 2019 because people want to buy Nintendo's product. People want to buy an Xbox product. People have already bought PlayStation, so they're not getting as much attention because you've already had one pretty much. Okay? So Nintendo is starting to see competition from, Sony's starting to see competition from Nintendo, my bad. They're starting to see that competition because they're starting to watch their fan base go from all Sony to buying a Nintendo or buying a Xbox, because Sony is dropping the ball on so many things. And if you think, oh well, you're just nitpicking, look at the PlayStation 1 Classic and tell me they didn't cut tremendous corners of anything. This company took a Nintendo approach and created something that is high in demand while cutting more corners on it than Nintendo did with the 3DS. Yes, Nintendo quit putting in a charge plug and started charging people $10 for it. Yes, that was a stupid move. But the excuse they gave was actually really good, which is you probably have one of these laying around, considering how many DSs are out there in the wild, how many 3DSs are out there in the wild. You probably have a DS charger laying in your house somewhere. Okay? PlayStation didn't put a power cord in with their classic console. There's no excuse for that. And not only is there no excuse because it's not even the same cord that they use with the PS4, the PS2, the PS1, or the PS3, which would have been fine by me. I have 4 PlayStations. I can choose from one of them. You dig? And it wouldn't be a big deal. You feel what I'm saying? Oh, they didn't throw in a power cord. Well, just use the one you have from your PlayStation 1 or 2 and then you're good to go. No, it's a different cord. Worse decision. Even more cost efficient, making the system worth even less money than it already is on the market currently in its state now. So think about that. All these wild predictions for the PS5 have got to be brought to a screeching halt when you start looking at this thing in actual reality. PlayStation cut so many corners and took far fewer risks because of how much debt and how much money they don't have. Versus, all eyes are on us. Let's fix the Vita. Let's improve upon the PS4. Let's spend the money. And we'll make it back because we are the number one console right now. Completely different approach. And that's why I'm going to continue to say PlayStation 4 will never live up to its hype. It will never catch PS1. Hell, it doesn't even have a snowball's chance in hell to catch PS2. Because PlayStation was scared straight. They were scared to death when the PS3 ended. Because they didn't know how we were going to take the PS4. They didn't think it was really going to sell. And I guarantee you, the moment Xbox dropped the ball in 2013, PlayStation had this huge moment of relaxation, like when you take a deep breath and relax. You feel what I'm saying? Like, that's probably how Sony executives and Sony corporate employees were handling that. Because when it was 2013, they came into this generation hemorrhaging millions of dollars. All their other divisions were technical losses. They weren't profit at all. The only one that was PlayStation, and Sony took money from those other divisions to keep PlayStation afloat. Could you imagine had Xbox not stumbled as hard? Could you imagine had people been interested in the Wii U when the PS4 came out? It would be a different ball game. Because Sony would have had to interact more than they have. Okay? They would have had to do a lot more than they have done. Their advertisements reminds me of Nintendo Wii U. They're for shit. Okay? The Wii U is a good system, but unless you were in the know or a Nintendo fan, you didn't care about the Wii U because the advertisement was not good. It was terrible. PS4 Pro falls victim to the Wii U's advertisement. It is shit. It is piss poor. Sony doesn't even mention the PS4 Pro in any of its advertisements. And it's a shame because they could buy more time with the PS4 Pro if they really wanted to. This generation could continue to go for another 5 years with the PS4 Pro versus the Xbox One Slim and the Xbox One X. Because I guarantee you, PlayStation, right now, with as much positive numbers they've pulled this generation, have enough influence to do that. Because they don't have that competition. They don't have that threat. They have the financial threat, but they don't have the competition threat. So, if they wanted to, they could extend this generation by at least 5 more years, forcing developers to make games for the Pro. Paying attention to the customer more than they are now. We're going to be in 2019 before we can even change our PlayStation names. Xbox has been making that a thing since basically the 360. It might have been a thing on Xbox original, but I don't know. I know on the 360 you could change your name if you didn't like your first actual name you created. So I'm thinking about that. There's things PlayStation is not on par with. They're not in the 2019 or even coming into 2019. Hell, they're stuck in 2013. And it's sad because I want to see a PS5 do good. I want to see a PS5 that is capable of handling 4K at 60 frames a second. I have a 4K TV. I will buy a PS5 if it's 4K ready, meaning 4K streaming, 4K Blu-ray, 4K gaming, and not tricking everything into thinking it's 4K. I mean, pulling it off without even trying. Printing games on 4K Blu-rays just so it's actually enhanced more confidence in people who buy them, because even if you buy digitally, you're like, I don't know if it's in 4K. I have no idea. You know, Recognizing file size matters. Recognizing that installation times matter. These things that Sony have not paid any attention to matter. And unless they actually acknowledge these things and they show these things in acknowledging and they come to fruition when the system launches, I don't expect the reputation to be still A-okay, considering you have Xbox who has taken a look at those issues and who has tried to fix them. Not only memory, but download speeds. That was the first thing they talked about when they talked about updating the Game Pass. They started right off the bat. Oh, by the way, with Game Pass, man, we've gone in and done some twerking on it, and download speeds are improved. If you have this version or if you have that version, download speeds, you can tell the difference. They talk about that stuff. Therefore, people are like, oh, I'm interested. PlayStation, you've been very, very quiet, very whisper quiet, in fact, when it comes to the shit you were touting about. Because you haven't done anything about any of them. Whereas with Xbox, they were touting about it, and they're actually doing that kind of thing. There's a huge difference there, which is why I think you do need the Pro to be on the market for a couple more years, 3 to 5 more years, and you need to make it the main focal point of your company. Instead of making an option between the Pro and the fucking Slim. Take the Slim out of it, make it the Pro, force the developers to make 4K games for the Pro. And then people's idea of this next generation might calm down a little bit more. It might be more realistic. It might actually be something to look forward to, because you're showing by doing these things, hey, we hear you. We not only hear you, but we're showing you we're doing it. By doing it is how we hear you. And Sony, you don't necessarily have the reputation for a company that does that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you a bunch of shit that I hope to see from the PS5, because honestly, all the shit that I told you earlier is what I want. I want a native 4K 60 frames, no problem. If the PS5 cannot pull that off, there's a problem. Sony, quit worrying about the price of the product and provide a product that people want. Then find out how much they're willing to pay for it. A PS5 native 4K with a 4K Blu-ray player in there, we're doing 4K at 60 frames a second with video games, people are going to be willing to pay $500, $600 for it. And I know that sounds god awful, but think about it. If it's native, there is no trickery here. If it's native, and it's got a 4K Blu-ray player in it, and it's got the sleek, sexy design, everyone will buy it. Even at $600 in 2018, even at $600 in 2019. People would buy it because they want to see that exact thing. People didn't buy the Pro because, hey, I paid $250 for an Xbox One Slim, and it has a 4K Blu-ray player in there, and it does do HDR rendering, and it does do 4K games on certain games. That's more positive for one system than for your main Pro. Okay? So, when thinking about the PS5, don't shoot for something way out there. Shoot for common sense. What are they fucking up now? How can they fix that and implement it in the PS5? Well, that checkered board rendering trickery with teraflop titties and wizards, stop. Stop. Make it native 4K without it. Put in as much power as you need. Put in as much teraflop titties as you need. Get the wizards out of here. Make this system an actual thing that people are looking for now. Don't look down the road. Don't do that. Look now. Focus on now, because you're not innovative. And you've proved that time and time again this generation, along with last generation. You're not innovative. Listen to your fans. And I think listen to your fans is going to become fucking abundantly clear this coming up basically tomorrow, when the PS1 Classic launches and the numbers are nowhere near as strong as Sony's going to say they should be. no matter how little it sells, and Sony's trying to turn it into a good thing. Sony's not going to look at this as a profit. They're going to look at it as, we really fucked up. They fucked up so bad, in fact, I'm going to end it on this. They fucked up so bad, in fact, people have been begging Nintendo for a Nintendo 64 Mini. Sony fucked this up so bad. Sega. People are looking to Sega to release a Sega Dreamcast Mini. That's how bad the PS1 Classic is. People are basically begging for Nintendo to come in and release a Nintendo 64 Mini. They're looking to Sega to release a Sega Dreamcast Mini. They want some other mini. They don't want PlayStation 1 Classic because of how bad it is. Okay? And it wasn't like they had a hard job in the first place. Pause. This was going to be the easiest fucking way to make money. And they went the opposite route. They know what people expect from PlayStation. They just didn't do it. And it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. You think PlayStation has all this money? No, they don't. They've been the #1 selling console this generation. I'll not argue that at all. But they've also been the most financially unstable. Not because they've been making a lot of profit, but because they are not making as much profit as they should. Alright? And I will continue to say that for as long as it's true. And right now it's true. I am afraid of what the PS5 is going to have wrong with it, because Sony really can't afford to be anti-consumer on any front. And I'm out this bitch.